Lions Tour Test number 1, South Africa and the British and Irish Lions is not too far away. We have teams been named. I will put those in the description so you guys can check them out. We'll go over the squads, some of the predictions, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how things are going to play out. Things got pretty real, didn't they? It's been kind of teasing us for quite some time. The closest we've had thus far was the South Africa A game, which was, a semi-full strength South African team. Not quite. And likewise for the Lions, not all the guys who played in that game are in this team. But there's been a few kind of blowout scorelines and a bit of COVID going around, but we are there at last. So I guess I will say congratulations to both squads and their management and the logistics people and all the organisers for actually getting this to go ahead. Knock on wood, I'm not jinxing it because, it looks like everything is going to go ahead despite all the difficulties. And, you got to be pretty pumped for this one. It's on in Cape Town. It's at 6 o'clock local time. I think that's 4 in the morning for me over here, which is not too bad. I can definitely drag myself out of bed for this game. The lead up to these games, like I mentioned, there's been a few blowouts, 28-10 over Japan, and then against the South African provincial sides, pretty easy going for the Lions, you would have to say. The 31-71 game against the Sharks being the only time they really conceded a lot of points, and it was kind of close for part of the game. I say that as it looks on the board, 71-31 looks like an absolute hiding, but first half was kind of competitive. The Lions have been kind of tracking pretty well, I think, is a fair comment. South Africa got back into action against Georgia, 40 points to 9, pretty comfortable. Again, slightly slow out of the blocks, but then kind of came through pretty well. And then they showed, as I mentioned, a largely full strength, but not quite. South Africa A side managed to beat the Lions 17-13 in what is the closest kind of precursor we have to the competition itself. So they proved in that game, much like Argentina did when they came out of isolation against the All Blacks last year, that just being in isolation doesn't mean you're going to be rusty. You can still come out looking the sharper of the two sides. So, that's how we got to this point. And here we are. The South Africans have named a side which is very familiar if you followed the Rugby World Cup 2019. I did a video way back when predicting what my team would have been, and it was largely a 19 Rugby World Cup squad, and that's what we've got. I had a comment on that video saying, waste of time if you're just going to pick the 2019 squad. Well, you better talk to Jacques Nina, because he's not gone real hard on changes, and why would you when you've got this kind of talent? One guy who's into the squad who wasn't in the Rugby World Cup is Nche. He is at loose head. Bongi and Mbonambi is at hooker, and Trevor Nyakane is at tight head. So Bongi's the only guy who started in the final. Remember, Trevor was in the squad, but he got injured, and he was kind of the form prop at that time. He seems to have been under a little bit of pressure from what we've seen of him, which is limited this time around. But they asked him that in the press conference in the build-up, and Jacques said he's got complete confidence that Trevor's going to get it sorted, and he's got his role. I wouldn't imagine the front rowers go much beyond half-time, if at all. And I mentioned Ox, whose game's come along pretty well in the last few years, I would say. He's the guy who kind of has to fill the big shoes of Tentai Mtawira, who's obviously retired. But, it's been an area I've seen a lot of people saying that the Lions are going to absolutely dominate. I'm not convinced. I still think Trevor can pick up his game, and I don't think Ox is anything to be kind of a guy to be kind of disregarded, because he's taken the beast spot for a reason. Eben, Etzebeth and Franco Mostert, both guys who played in the Rugby World Cup final. One started, one was on the bench. We kind of know what to expect from these guys. Franco Mostert's going to be a huge work rate guy. Eben, his physical presence is going to be ever present. And if there's any handbags to be seen in this game, pushing and shoving, you can bet he'll probably be involved as well, because he doesn't shy away from sticking up for his boys. Good news for the Springboks is Kolisi is back. He's on the open side, and he captains the side for this one. So he's the guy who lifted the cup last year. It will be interesting to see what kind of shape he is in, having been in lockdown. But as I mentioned with the Argentina guys, with the South Africa A game, just because you guys are confined to hotel rooms doesn't mean they're going to play poorly. So I expect him to have a lot of pent-up frustration, which he may look to take out on some guys in red. Pieter-Steph du Toit was one of the main difference makers in the A game. I think you would say he went off. And South Africa A didn't quite look as good a side. His physical presence, he's also got that work rate. He hits really hard and he gets up off the deck really fast to hit you again. He loves doing that. So, yeah, he's going to be a key man. He was World Player of the Year for a reason. Another talking point has been Kwagga Smith's choice at number 8. You don't get about as different a number 8 comparing Vermeulen and Kwagga Smith. Obviously, Vermeulen is still injured. A few people kind of criticizing it, saying, he's no Dwayne Vermeulen. Well, he's not trying to be Dwayne Vermeulen. He's a different guy, different body shape. He's a sevens guy rather than a kind of huge physical presence. He gets you with his athleticism. He is very strong. He is very fast. He's very quick at the breakdown. And he was, again, Jacques Nienaber was asked about him in the press conference. And, again, he kind of talked up his ability to get momentum with that speed and his evasion based on his sevens background. So, yeah, don't look at him to be doing what Dwayne Vermeulen does, but look at him to be doing what Kwagga Smith does well. Backs, Faf Klerk and Handre Pollard is that 19 combo from the World Cup. Again, Handre is another one that'll be interesting to see what kind of condition he's in. I don't think he will bat an eyelid. As I mentioned, the guys who've been at the hotel will probably look to be getting cracking. And Faf is one that Warren Gatland was given a fair bit of stick for his tackle technique. So I guess the spotlight will be on him. So he needs to kind of keep that in check. But he's a key man for the Springboks. He's not one guy you would like to see down. But they do have Kolbe who's not even in the 23 if they ever needed to have another 9. So it's not like they're desperately short of 9s. Allende and is that World Cup midfield. They may be... well, at least Damian Allende will, I reckon he'll want to run at Elliot Daly, who's at 13. Elliot Daly is the selection for the Lions, and I guess we'll get to the Lions squad in a minute. But, I reckon offensively, Damian Allende will be looking to make some space. Lukhanyo showed in that A game why he is one of the best midfielders in the world. He reads the game so well. He's quick, and, he's just such a good defensive reader. And just sets up offensive plays as well. He knows how to be in the right place at the right time, which sounds easy, but it's really not. Mapimpi, Kolbe, and Roux is that same back 3 from the World Cup. So, yeah, there you go. It's a World Cup winning back 3. There's a bit of talk about why isn't Fussy in the side. Well, Fussy has not got the experience that guys like Roux, Kolbe, and Mapimpi have. Mapimpi's another guy who's not really played. So his condition will be an interesting one to see. Kolbe, we saw what he did against the British Irish Lions in the A game. So Warren Gatland has basically said, don't kick him the ball, because that's asking for trouble. And Roux, I think he'll be safer than he was at the World Cup under the high ball, because the injuries that he used to have shouldn't be there any longer. The bench is Marx, Kitshoff, and Malherbe, which is a better front row than most sides could start with, and they've got these guys on the bench, so look them to cause havoc. Nyakane is another guy who's coming back from injury, so his fitness will be one to watch. Allstad is there covering the loose forwards. Yankees, that's Herschel. Yankees, that's Elton, and Damian Willems are the 3 back replacements, so it's a 5-3 split on the bench, so the regular kind of 5 forwards, 3 backs. They did say, why no 6-2? And Jacques Nienaber basically said, because the guys like Mapimpi and Pollard are just coming back from injury, they want to make sure they've got coverage on the bench for these guys. They don't want to risk, them having to play 80 if they haven't got the replacements to jump on from the bench. Elton didn't look to be in his sharpest form, but he's certainly the most experienced guy. It is interesting that they've gone with Willems, because Willems is usually a fullback or 10, maybe a 12. Elton's pretty much just a 10, and Herschel's a 9. So there's not really an out-and-out wing replacement. I guess Willems is the midfield replacement if he has to come on. But I guess Roux can jump to the wing if he needs to. He has played for the Springboks on the wing, but I don't think for ages. Maybe 2013. Long time ago. So, yeah, it's an interesting set of replacements. But as I mentioned, they want to make sure the guys who aren't 100% fit have got coverage if it is needed. For the Lions, there's going to be debate about this side, as there always is. I'm a neutral, so I think it's a pretty strong-looking side, just like the Springboks one. You got Wyn Jones, Luke Cowan-Dickie, and Tyke Furlong as the front row. And scrummaging-wise, that probably is the strongest front row you can field. Wyn Jones, in the A game, looked to be getting on top, so he'll like to continue that. Tyke Furlong continues to be one of the best tight heads in the world. And Cowan-Dickie's physical presence sees him elevated above like his England teammate, Jamie George. So, yeah, kudos to him for managing to kind of get ahead. Warren Gatland just continues to pick picks, which Eddie Jones refuses to pick, which is an interesting one. The story of Allende Wyn Jones' return to captain the side in number 4 is a phenomenal one. Yeah, that's just a story for the ages, man. The fact that he was out of the tour only a few weeks ago, and now here he is starting in the first test to captain the side. I think the initial thoughts were maybe he could be back for the third. The fact that he's back for the first one is crazy. Warren Gatland did talk about maybe starting him from the bench, but when they decided to play Ali Price at 9, they said maybe they're lacking a little bit on leadership, so that means Allende Wyn has to start. So does that speak to him, Warren, maybe thinking Allende Wyn is underdone? He's played enough rugby to go in underdone as well, but let's hope he is 100% fit. Mauro Itoje is there at 5. Did get penalised a couple of times. I know people are very, very concerned about the amount of penalties that guy gives away. He had, I think, a higher than usual penalties conceded rate in the recent year. But I think overall his career has not been hugely drastically bad on terms of penalties conceded. But it is an area he's going to have to watch because Handre Pollard can punish you. But I think what he brings in his ability to disrupt mauls, his ability to get dominant tackles is worth having in the squad. Likewise, Courtney Laws is one of the better dominant tacklers you'll get if you ever read those stats during the Six Nations. He's always one of the main guys. And another liner option being essentially like a lock-loose forward. Curry wins the battle at 7 over Hamish Watson. I know Scottish fans will probably be pretty miffed that the Mish is on the bench, but honestly, with those two, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You get very similar results from either one. I know English fans think Curry is the best 7 since goodness knows when. They're both very good, man. Heaps of tackles, heaps of turnovers. They like carrying the ball, very fit, very active. Like, must drink Red Bull for breakfast because they're both full of beans. So yeah, either way is good. You got to be happy with both, but the Mish is on the bench anyway. And Jack Conan, interestingly, wins the battle at 8. So he pips the likes of Faletau, who maybe hasn't been as sharp as he could have been, and Sam Simmons, for people who were predicting that Warren was going to play a really quick game with Simmons at 8. It's Conan who's kind of a more traditional physical 8 there. So he will have a handful trying to keep Kwagga Smith under control, but I mean, Conan's been in great form for the last 12 months as well. As I mentioned, Ali Price wins the battle at 9, and I think he has looked the sharpest of the 3 9s thus far. Although it is hard to say based on some of the results we've seen being so lopsided. Dan Bigger also wins the battle at 10. I think that was kind of a pretty predictable one with Gats being in charge. Farrell not looking as sharp when he played 10, although I still think maybe they were under instructions to kick a lot more than they needed to in that A game anyway. But yeah, Finn Russell being injured, Marcus Smith. Gats has been talking about how everyone's going to get a fair crack, but essentially when you hear him talking about Marcus Smith, he talks about him like he's learning more than he's a realistic chance for a test. Henshaw and Daly is the midfield that I mentioned. So Henshaw, he sat out a few games injured. We did see him come back. He wasn't at his blockbusting best when we did see him come back against the Stormers. But in terms of reputation and form for this year, I think he is the guy. Daly has been bringing a lot. He's got that big old boot. Offensively, he is very sharp. I do worry a little bit about his defensive numbers, which are always 70-ish in terms of his tackle completion rate, which is why I think Damian Allende, if he gets a chance to run at him, will run at him. But yeah, he'll have to put in a big shift. It's a Lions test, man. So good luck to him, and he'll certainly create havoc with ball in hand. Duan van der Merwe, Anthony Watson are the wingers, plus Stuart Hogg wins the battle at the back. Obviously, the main omission there you would think is Josh Adams, because he's been having a cracking run thus far. But I think he's been punished, if it's the right word to use, for dropping out of that game to Zoom his missus when she was having her baby. That seems to be what it is. because in the press conference, Warren Gatland talked about the emotional stuff that Adams has been going through, and then when he came back, he wasn't as sharp as he could have been. And then he kind of mentioned it being like, did he say deciding factor? Or like an easy decision? Yeah. So that seems to be, if you're following the Wallabies at all, Marika Korobede missed his birth of his child to play for the Wallabies. Maybe that's what Gats expect of his players as well. But anyway, it's Duhan van der Merwe, which is no slouch, man. Duhan van der Merwe, as Warren mentioned, top try scorer in the Six Nations. He's looked to be a block-busting ball carrier as well. He's going to be marking Cheslin Kolbe, which is not an easy feat for anybody, let alone a guy his size. But he'll be looking to run over a few of his compatriots, former compatriots. Watson's there at 14. He's got heaps of experience, and I think we'll do really well. That kind of fleet-footed nature of his game, and good under the high ball, which seems to be what Warren wants because he thinks the South Africans are going to kick it a lot. And then Stuart Hogg as well. A little bit of kind of, I don't know, like Gats is not a guy who picks on emotion much, right? He's pretty cold and clinical, but he seemed to say that because Hoggy had missed out before, that he kind of wanted to give him a run, which seems uncharacteristic, but also mentioned his ability to carry the ball and whatnot. So, yeah, I don't know. The bench, Owen, Sutherland, and Sinclair is likewise a pretty bloody good front row to be bringing on. Mako Vunipola is one guy who misses out, who I actually think has looked decent on the Lions tour, apart from the first game. I think he's looked improvingly better, but he still misses out, even though he's been in kind of bad form, I thought, for the last wee while. Anyway, Tyke Byrne and Hamish Watson, as I mentioned. Murray, Farrell, and Williams, so 3 backs on the bench for them as well. Obviously, Farrell covers 10 and the midfield. Williams covers the back 3, and then Murray covers 9. So, yeah, man, it's gonna be an interesting one. I do think we will see more from the British and Irish Lions than what we saw in the South Africa A game. I don't think we will see just continuously tap and goes if they have penalties 5 metres out. I do think they will have scrums and set plays lined up, but I don't think they wanted to show them off before. Likewise, we'll probably see a little bit different from South Africa, especially with some of these guys like Pollard and Co being back. Mapimpi as a real handful. So, yes. I'm just happy to have this Springboks jersey on for the Lions tour. I'm happy to have that jersey hanging there. It's going to be a cracking tour. If you're looking for the predictions in this one, doesn't get any closer. The bookies have got pretty much at evens, with South Africa as half a point favourites. So as close as it is ever going to get. And the rugby forecast algorithm has South Africa winning it by 1 point. So yeah, it will be an interesting one to see. Is Alun Wyn-Jones' body going to hold out for the game? Is he 100% fit? Likewise, Handre, Pollard, Mapimpi, and Mbonambi, and Kolisi, all these guys who are coming out of isolation, are they going to be up to their 100% best? I think so. Will we see the bomb squad in game 2 with 6-2 split? Maybe, but we'll have to wait and see. We've still got test 1 to get underway first. Do let me know your thoughts, guys. Who else do you think is unlucky to miss out? Obviously, on both sides, there are guys who have missed out on selection. It's a very familiar side for the Springboks, largely based on those guys who have got that winning mentality from the Rugby World Cup 2019. The Lions, I think there's a few surprises maybe, but based on form, like Wyn-Jones, I think, has been the form loose head. Ali Price has been the form 9. Yeah, I don't know. I think you'd have to be pretty happy for the most part. But obviously there'll be a bit of grumbling. It's to be expected. I'm a neutral, so I can just kind of enjoy it. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts. 18 minutes. Sorry about that, guys. It's the Lions test. You guys take care. I'll talk to you soon. See you later.